You are invited to participate in our transportation planning process regardless of your race, color, national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, veteran status, or background. You can read the full notice of your rights and protections at www.bostonmpo .org/MPO _NON DISCRIMINATION. All participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. Please rename yourself to include your first name, last name, and affiliation. After a roll call, board members may mute and unmute themselves. Others should remain muted unless actively speaking. To participate in the discussion, please select the raise hand function. Find this by clicking either on the participants button at the bottom of the screen, and a window will pop up with a raise hand button at the bottom, or the reactions button in the toolbar. The chair will then call on participants. If you are on the phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. If you have any technical difficulties, please contact Betsy Harvey via the chat box or at eharvey@ctps.org or call her at 857-702-3701. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant, with exceptions, with the following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 Level AA standards and revised Section 508 standards. If you require any additional accommodations in order to participate fully in this meeting, please contact Betsy Harvey of the MPO staff at eharvey@ctps.org or 857-702-3701. Good morning, everyone. I'm David Muller. I represent Secretary Monica Tibbett-Nuts here. Will you please call the roll?
Mass DOT Seat 2.
John Bouchard, representing Highway Administrator Jonathan Gulliver, President.
Mass DOT Highway Division.
John Romano here.
MBTA.
Sandy Johnson, representing General Manager Phil Eng and the MBTA.
Massport.
Sarah Lee, representing Massport.
MAPC.
Julia Wallers, representing Eric Barassa, MAPC.
MBTA Advisory Board.
I do not see a representative from the MBTA Advisory Board.
Thank you. Advisory Council.
Hello, Leonard Diggins Advisory Council here.
City of Boston BTD.
Jen Rowe, representing BTD, and Mayor Wu.
City of Boston BPDA.
Jim Fitzgerald, representing BPDA and representing Mayor Wu and the City of Boston.
At-large City, City of Everett.
Eric Molinari, sitting in for Jay Monty, representing Mayor DeMaria and the City of Everett.
At-large City, City of Newton.
I do not see a representative from Newton.
At-large Town, Town of Arlington.
Good morning, John Alessi, representing Select Board Chair Eric Hellman, the Town of Arlington.
At-large Town, Town of Brookline.
Robert King is joining at this moment, so let's return.
Got it. Intercore Committee, City of Somerville.
Good morning, Tom Bent, City of Somerville in the Intercore Committee, also representing Mayor Katsiana Ballantyne.
Minuteman Advisory Group on Interlocal Coordination, Town of Acton.
Good morning, Kristen Guichard, representing Select Board Chair Jim Snyder Grant, the Magic Subregion.
Metro West Regional Collaborative, City of Framingham.
Dennis Giambetti, representing Metro West Region, and Mayor Charles.
North Shore Task Force, City of Beverly.
Since Darlene Wynn, representing the North Shore Task Force on behalf of Mayor Cahill.
North Suburban Planning Council, Town of Burlington.
I do not see Melissa Tintakoulis.
South Shore Coalition, Town of Hull.
I do not see Chris Diorio.
Southwest Advisory Planning Committee, is that Medway or is that Rentham now?
That is now Rentham.
Okay.
Hi, Rachel Benson, SWAP Regional Rep, here representing Joe Botash, Chair.
Thank you. Three Rivers Interlocal Council, Town of Norwood, Neponset River Regional Chamber.
Good morning, Tom O'Rourke from the Town of Norwood, representing the Church Sub-Region.
And our ex officio members, Federal Highway Administration.
I do not see anyone from FHWA.
Federal Transit Administration.
And I also do not see anyone from FTA.
Actually, Brandon Burns with FTA, Region 1 is on.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
And Rob King, did you want to identify yourself for Town of Brookline?
Good morning, all. Rob King, representing Select Board Chair Bernard Green, Town of Brookline.
And I believe Brian King just entered, maybe?
Great. Brian Kane, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone. Brian Kane, MBTA Advisory Board. Thank you, David, for recognizing me. And
anytime.
Meeting.
Great. That should call the roll. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Next item on the agenda is the chair's report. I do not have one this week, so we will now go to the new member introductions. And I believe, Julia, are you going to do this?
Yes, I am prepared to do that. First of all, can everyone hear me? I'm being told I have an unstable internet connection. All good. All good.
It's good, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Sounds good. I'm actually in the MBTA office here. For some reason, the guest Wi-Fi is not so solid. But I'm Julia Wallers here today for MAPC. And our new member introductions are essentially announcing, I'm happy to announce the results of the Boston MPO 2023 municipal election for the 4 seats that were up for re-election and were recently announced at our MAPC Fall Council meeting. So just to reiterate that and do that in a more official capacity here with the MPO, I'm excited to say that the Town of Brookline was re-elected for the at-large town seat. That's Bernard Green, Select Board Chair, whose designee is Robert King. Second, the City of Everett was re-elected for the at-large seat. Carly De Maria, the mayor, whose designee is Jay Monty. The City of Beverly was re-elected for the North Shore Task Force seat. Michael P. Cahill, the mayor, whose designee is Darlene Wynn, or Wine. And the Town of Rentham was elected for the Southwest Advisory Planning Committee SWAP seat. Joseph F. Botesh, Select Board Chair, whose designee is Rachel Benson. Congratulations to these municipalities. We greatly appreciate their continued participation and look forward to the Town of Rentham joining the MPO board for the first time.
Thank you, Julia.
I think that's all. And yeah, thank you very much. I think, yeah, our position, which we'll have a vote at the meeting of November 30th. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. And on behalf of the MPO, I'd like to echo what Julia said and welcome all the current members back and welcome the new member of the Town of Rentham. Really happy to have you. If there's anything we can do to make your transition onto the MPO easier, please let us know. And please be in touch with Tegan because she'll lead you through the process. The Executive Director's report, Tegan.
Perfect segue. Thank you, David. I also have to extend my welcome to the new member, our new member Rentham, and Rachel as the designee. So welcome. And also, I just want to also thank our continuing members for your ongoing service to the board. So I'll treat this as though it's a bit new, but as the executive director for the staff to the MPO, I provide a few updates near the beginning of each of our meetings. And I usually cover things like agency updates, such as new or departing staff, kind of recruitment initiatives, engagement updates to keep you both apprised, but also to sort of engage the board members in those activities. And then I like to also try to preview what's coming up today and then what's coming up in a future meeting. So with that, I'll go into some staffing updates. Next slide, please. So 3 new staff members actually joined us last Monday, and 2 I would like to ask to say hello. I have mentioned them before, but I'll just reiterate that first, I'd like David Hong to say hello. He's our new manager of MPO activities. This is a very important role and also a role or a person that you all as board members will frequently interact with. So David Hong, if you are with us, could you unmute and just say hello to the board, please?
Hello, everyone. This is David Hong. As Tegan mentioned, the new manager of MPO activities. In this role, I'll be one of your main points of contact from the Boston Regional MPO and CTPS staff. I value your understanding while I ramp up and am eager to meet each and one of you in person or set up some time separately to get better acquainted over the next little while. I'm dedicated to listening and providing support to our board members, as is my mandate. And just a tad bit about myself, I'm from Toronto originally, have lived in DC, in South Korea as well. I've been in private industry on the tech side for about 8 years, but am delighted to make the shift over to the better side and work with CTPS and work with you all. So I'm very excited and thank you for the warm welcome as well. Thank you.
We are thrilled to have David with us. So thank you for saying hello. And again, I'm sure you all will start to meet each other very soon. Then I'd also like to introduce somebody who I announced was starting as well. This is Abby Katrumbas. She is our new policy analyst, which is a new role for the agency as a whole and important for us to be able to better ground our work in the policy landscape that we are all working in. So Abby, if you are here, could you unmute and say hello to the board and those in the meeting?
Hi, I'm Abby. Like Tegan said, I'm the new transportation policy analyst. So I'll be working on state and federal policy and also just generally supporting the MPO with like any policy questions that arise and new things that come out. Prior to this, I worked for Representative Michelle Socolo in the State House, who is also like a huge transportation person. She was the president of MAPC at one point. So that's really how I knew that this whole world existed, was through her. So I'm really, really excited to get going on my own in this field. So very happy to be here, happy to observe and learn, and that's me.
Thanks, Abby. All right, thank you both for introducing yourselves to put a face to the name. I want to mention one other name, if you can go to the next slide. So we also were recently joined, the staff was joined by Paul Ream. He's actually rejoined us after retiring in 2022. So he's somebody who's already had 35 years with us at CTPS, and he's done a lot of the work, kind of the more technical work in the background. I'm not sure how often this board actually saw him, but we're thrilled to have him back as a senior model advisor with the model development team on a part-time basis. And then also, I wanted to mention 2 new starting employees and staff members in November. That will be Jia Huang. That is the first time I have mentioned her to you. She will be the new public engagement coordinator. And then the other is someone who I mentioned in a prior meeting, Kyle Casiglio, who's going to be a transportation planner in the multimodal planning and design group with a specialization in bicycle and pedestrian transportation. So when we have a chance, we'll introduce those to you as well. Next slide. And even with all of those new folks joining us, we still have some open positions. The newest posting is for a manager of model development. So please take a look at our website and help us spread the word. Next slide. And then we continue to have a number of kind of standing open positions as well that we are recruiting for. So again, please help us spread the word and go to our careers page at our website. Next slide. So then on to engagement updates. A big update that we have, I hope you all noticed that the federal fiscal year 25 to 29 Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, applications are now open. So this is an exciting time where we receive applications to sort of add to our universe of TIP projects that we'll be looking at and potentially scoring. There are also going to be some how-to sessions for those who are less familiar with the process, and you are very welcome to join over the coming week or two. The first one will be this afternoon at 3 p.m. and the next one will be next Thursday, the 9th at 10 a.m. So also please share these with your networks in your subregions with other municipalities to encourage them to learn more about the TIP and how to apply. And if you have any questions, Ethan Lapointe is your contact at elapointe@ctps.org. Next slide. And then also I wanted to talk about the completion of a couple of efforts that we've been engaging in. First of all, staff have now attended the full set of 8 sub-regional groups with MAPC staff to talk about this TIP cycle, this TIP activities coming up, and also the sub-regional needs and priorities. So as board members, we really appreciate those of you who are able to help us spread the word and also attend as participants, because it gives us very valuable insight and input into our ongoing program work that we have. And then also in the last few weeks, I've mentioned a number of in-person events that staff have been attending. And these are more opportunities to connect with members of the public and shape our kind of ongoing engagement activities. So while we've wrapped up some of these activities, we welcome any ideas that any of you might have about how to participate in in-person activities within your municipalities. Next slide. All right, today we have one action item. It is an amendment to the 2024 UPWP, or Unified Planning Work Program, essentially to add a federal discretionary grant that's been awarded to the MBTA. And then we'll be asking you for your nominations for vice chair. This happens every year, and the voting is now occurring in our newly kind of formatted annual meetings. So that at the next meeting, we'll ask you to vote. We will also be having committee chairs or the representatives talk about the different committees that this board has and the activities that they engage in to solicit either returning volunteers or new volunteers to join those committees. And we will confirm those committee slates at the annual meeting in several weeks. And then today we also have one study to present. That's an intersection study in Lynn, and Seth Asante will be presenting that. Next slide, last slide, I think. So just as a reminder, the next meeting, there is no meeting on November 16th. That's our usual timing. The next one will be on November 30th, and that is the annual meeting. It is in person with an option to participate virtually if you need to. We will set up refreshments so that you can join us and mingle at 9:30, and then the meeting starts at 10. Again, as a reminder, it is the Secretary of Transportation has been invited to attend and preside. And we'll have a little bit of a different kind of order of agenda at the annual meeting to sort of accommodate this different structure. We'll actually be moving business to the end. So the action items and votes towards the end. And so please do plan to stay for the full meeting if you are a designee, even if somebody else maybe from your municipality might be attending. And then we'll also cover some of the agenda items towards the beginning that you all have asked for. We'll talk a little bit about just the MPO, why it exists, and the overview of the transportation investment process. And we'll have representatives from the National Association of MPOs come to provide some perspective at that federal funding kind of context level, and the legislation and authorizations that kind of dictate or set up what it is that MPOs do. So with that, I can answer any questions, Mr. Chair, or move on.
Thank you, Tegan. Any questions for Tegan? Seeing and hearing none. Next item on the agenda is public comments. Are there any comments from the public at this time? Seeing no hands raised, if you have, I'm sorry, Brad Rawson, City of Somerville.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Board. Good morning, staff. Just to build on Tegan's report about annual meeting, we're so excited that we're doing this in person. Tom Bent and I have been working to make sure that Mayor Ballantyne's calendar includes attendance at that meeting. So I would respectfully encourage all board members who represent municipalities to advocate with their CEOs to show their faces. We're taking a lot of pride in this organization. We're seeing great recruitment, great process improvements. So let's keep that great momentum going and have a good show of diverse municipalities at the table physically at our annual meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Any other comments at this time? Seeing none, if you have a comment during the meeting, raise your hand and we will try to call on you. Next item on the agenda is committee chairs reports. Are there any at this time? Derek Cravat.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to let everyone know that the Unified Planning Work Program Committee met last Thursday, October 26th. And as Tegan mentioned in her Executive Director's report, there is an action item to adjust into the federal fiscal year 2024 UPWP as a planning grant that the MBTA received to design electric bus charging infrastructure at Ashmont Station. So the UPWP committee voted last week to recommend approval of that adjustment into the current UPWP. So just wanted to let members know of that decision, and it's on the agenda for later this meeting, but wanted to let you know that it was endorsed by the committee as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Any questions for Derek? Seeing none. Jen Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm excited to announce that the TIP Process Engagement and Readiness Committee had its kickoff meeting 2 Thursdays ago on October 19th. Tegan and Ethan did a fantastic job setting the context and building a common baseline for committee members, making sure we're all up to speed on a set of long-term challenges and needs that led this board to create the committee, and on how the committee may move forward in response to those challenges, and address what we all recognize as a core and common goal of getting funding into the types of projects that contribute to the MPO's vision. We had a really robust discussion. Began with a desire to really consider the needs of everyone working towards this goal of funding vision-aligned projects, including those municipalities and state and federal partners that aren't necessarily on the committee itself, and kind of centering the notion that this committee is supplementing the decision-making of the board and is really an opportunity to make sure we're better informed in the decisions we're taking here. There was also a great interest in understanding and tackling the challenges that have been introduced by patterns we've seen over the past few years. Some of those that came up were the impact of project cost increases and delay, particularly involving major infrastructure projects, some of the limited contingency of the current TIP to absorb some cost increases, decrease we've seen in applications for projects outside of the Community Connections program, especially smaller projects that could fill in some of the gaps introduced by delayed projects, and then some continued funding constraints for new major infrastructure projects, despite some of the infusions in the recent bipartisan infrastructure law, given the amount that's already spoken for by existing major infrastructure projects like Rutherford, McGrath, and Western Ave. There was a lot of recognition among the group of the real complexity of some of these patterns, and also an enthusiasm from the committee and what we can accomplish together. Our next meeting will be sometime in mid-December. We don't yet have a date finalized, and that will focus on setting a foundation on the TIP funding scenarios, the TIP scoring process, which new scoring criteria have been implemented, and our priorities for the next TIP cycle. So thank you, and I'm excited to report back after that next meeting.
Thank you, Jen. Any questions for Jen? Seeing none, next item on the agenda is the Regional Transportation Advisory Council report. Lynn Diggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have not had a meeting since our last MPO meeting, but our next meeting is going to be on this coming Wednesday, and that will feature a discussion about the MPO's freight program, and also we'll be discussing the development of the next UPWP, kicking that off and getting a sense of the timeline. So that's it. Everyone's welcome to join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Any questions for Lynn? Seeing none, next item on the agenda is the approval of, I think, 2 sets of minutes, and we'll take them one at a time. Can I get a motion in a second to approve the September 21st minutes? And please state your name for the record when making the motions. Jen Rowe.
This is Jen Rowe, and I would like to motion to approve these meeting minutes.
John Alessi.
Glenn Alessi, I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Are there any comments, changes, questions, or suggestions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
David Moeller,
Yes.
John Bouchard, John Bouchard, are you able to unmute? You can come back. John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Julia Wallers,
Julia Wallers, yes.
Brian Kane,
Kane, yes.
Leonard Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald,
Jim Fitzgerald, yes. Apologies.
Eric Molinari,
Eric Molinari, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Rob King,
Rob King, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
Christy Orio, sorry, was that a yes?
Oreo, yes.
Great, thank you. Rachel Benson
Rachel Benson abstain.
and Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Great. And John Bouchard, are you back to vote? Okay. Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, oh, I'm sorry, next meeting, the next minutes are October 5th. Can I get a motion in a second to approve these minutes? And please state your name for the record when making the motion. John Alessi.
This is John Alessi. I'll move to approve the meeting minutes of the October 5th, 2023 meeting.
Thank you. Jen Rowe.
Jen Rowe, I will second that motion.
Thank you. Motion have been made and seconded. Are there any comments, changes, questions, or suggestions? Seeing none, please call the roll.
David Muller,
Yes.
John Bouchard, are you back? Able to vote? John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Julia Wallers,
Julia Wallers, yes.
Brian Kane,
Kane, yes.
Leonard Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald,
Jim Fitzgerald, yes.
Eric Molinari,
Eric Molinari, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Rob King,
Rob King, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent abstain.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
Christy Orio,
Oreo, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson abstain.
and Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is an adjustment to the Unified Planning Work Program. Sri Lanka Murthy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, members of the board. My name is Sri Murthy. I manage the Unified Planning Work Program, and today I am presenting Adjustment 1 to the Federal Fiscal Year 2024 UPWP. Next slide, please. This adjustment involves the inclusion of an MBTA project funded through a Federal Transit Administration grant program titled the Areas of Persistent Poverty Grant. This project provides funding for the MBTA to design battery electric bus charging infrastructure at Ashmont Station. Next slide, please. This project is not funded by the MPO and therefore has no impact on the UPWP's budget. Additionally, according to the MPO's public engagement plan, the inclusion of federal grant funded projects into UPWPs are considered administrative modifications or adjustments and therefore do not require a public comment period. On October 26th, the UPWP committee voted to recommend the inclusion of this adjustment into the UPWP. For today, I am asking that you vote to endorse this adjustment as presented. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Sri Lanka. Any questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion and a second to approve this adjustment as presented today? Please state your name for the record. John Alessi.
This is John Alessi. I'll move to approve this adjustment as presented today.
Thank you. Jen Rowe.
Jen Rowe, I will second that motion.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Please call the roll.
David Muller,
Yes.
John Bouchard, John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Julia Wallers,
Julia Wallers, yes.
Brian Kane,
Brian Kane, yes.
Leonard Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald,
Jim Fitzgerald, yes.
Eric Molinari,
I remember the month
Eric
ago,
Molinari,
Jim,
yes.
Yeah.
and we now have David Kozis.
David Kozis, yes. Sorry for being late.
No worries. Thank you. John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Rob King,
Rob King, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
Christy Orio,
Orio, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
and Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
John Bouchard's got his hand up. He's back.
Oh,
back in.
sorry. John Bouchard, go ahead.
No, I just, sorry, I missed the vote. My mute wouldn't unmute me. Sorry.
You still have
I vote
time.
yes.
You can
Yes.
say yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
That calls the roll.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Next item on the agenda is vice chair nominations. As Tegan mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, it's time to nominate our vice chair. It's an annual job we have, and we will take the final vote for this on next meeting on the 30th. So can I get a motion? Dennis Giambetti.
I move that you nominate Eric Barassa as vice chair.
Tom Bent.
I'd like to second that motion.
Thank you. Motion having been made and seconded. Are there any other nominations at this time? Seeing and hearing none, we will officially close the nominations and take a vote to approve. at our
David,
meeting
can
on
I ask
the
a
30th.
point of procedure?
Of course you can, Brian. I think it's your
Are we
procedure.
nominating Eric in his personal capacity or MAPC?
Well, for most of us, Brian, it's one and the same, but technically, yes, we're nominating MAPC.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a few bullet points Eric had asked me to share in the case of our nomination. If that's appropriate, just let me know when.
Of course, right now, Julia, thank you.
So yeah, thanks for the nomination. Eric is usually the one to represent MAPC, sometimes myself. I'm always on these meetings. I'm relatively new, came on in July, so just past my 3-month mark and ramping up. Excited to be representing him officially at this meeting. Eric is away this week, but wanting me to share that we are definitely interested in continuing as vice chair. Some things that we believe MAPC bring to this board, or we work to make our processes more transparent. We bring a strong sense of regionalism. That's really what MAPC is all about. And we look forward to balancing the interests of state agencies and the municipalities. So looking forward to the official vote on the 30th, and thank you for the nomination.
Thank you, Julia. Next item on the agenda is the solicitation of committee members. Are each of the committee chairs going to do a little presentation, or how are we doing this, Tegan?
Yes, that was the structure for this.
Okay, do you want to take the lead on this and call on individual chairs, and do they know they're making a little presentation? Hopefully.
They do. I don't know if we had pre-agreed upon an order, and so I'm not sure if Annette's in the room. I think she took the lead on setting that up. Or if one of you chairs know that you were going first, please raise your hand.
I'll just, Derek works for me. I'll just make Derek go first. Derek Cravat.
That works. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I am the chair of the Boston MPO's Unified Planning Work Program Committee. And just to say a few words about the committee, we regularly review and deliberate on the development of the Unified Planning Work Program, which for folks who aren't familiar is a budgetary document containing all the planning studies in a given federal fiscal year undertaken mostly by CTPS and MAPC. So the document lists descriptions of all the studies and dollar amounts for what they cost. We also provide input on new studies We can propose new study ideas and we evaluate proposals for studies as part of the UPWP process. So a particular area of the UPWP that we have a lot of input on is what we call the discrete studies. So these are studies that are kind of broad interest to all communities in the Boston MPO region. So examples of studies like this include a study that was funded over 2 phases of parking utilization rates at new lab sites in the region as a trend kind of happening over the pandemic. So that was something of broad interest. Things like that are things that we debate and have a lot of good discussions on at the committee. So we meet quarterly and throughout the year as needed. We meet more frequently in the springtime to coincide with the development of the next fiscal year's UPWP. Our meetings are usually on Thursdays at 1 p.m. I'm the chair, Srilekha Murthy, who spoke earlier on the UPWP adjustment, is the staff sort of lead on the UPWP. And our members include myself representing MassDOT, the MBTA Advisory Board, Arlington, Newton, the Metro West Regional Collaborative Metropolitan Area Planning Council, Regional Transportation Advisory Council, the City of Boston, Southwest Advisory Planning Committee, the Inner Core Committee, and the Three Rivers Interlocal Council. So, happy to answer any questions, or if folks are interested in serving, we're definitely, excited to entertain any new members or questions. So, thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Does anybody have any questions for Derek? Seeing none, since we don't have a list, I think I'll just call on people as I feel like it. Jen Rowe, since you're the newest chair, you want to take the next one?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. I said a few words about this committee earlier in the meeting, so I won't make my remarks here very long. We are the newest committee to be formed. We've met once. We review, this is a TIP process, engagement and readiness committee. We review the process for an annual development of the MPO's TIP, which is a 5-year rolling capital plan, and discuss potential improvements. The TIP documents all the transportation projects that will receive federal funding over the next 5 years in the region. The committee also provides an additional forum for board members and various project proponents and stakeholders to better understand project developments, which may include, as I discussed earlier, some cost and readiness changes. We meet throughout the year as needed, with more frequent meetings in the winter and spring to complement the active periods of TIP development. We've been meeting Thursdays at 1 p.m. When we do meet. Our next meeting, as I mentioned, is probably going to be sometime in December. Our members include myself as chair, the City of Boston, MassDOT, John Bouchard and Derek Cravat, MAPC, Eric Barassa, Len Diggins with the Regional Transportation Advisory Council, Metro West Regional Collaborative, Dennis Giambetti, the Minuteman Advisory Group on Interlocal Communication, Kristen Bouchard, Town of Brookline, Rob King, Town of Arlington, John Alessi, and the Inner Core Committee, Brad Ralston. We were just recently created, so I don't anticipate any necessarily changes in our membership, although of course we recognize that the Town of Brookline is new, so that is certainly an opportunity if there's interest there. And I will say Ethan LaPointe is our contact on MPO staff as the TIP manager.
Thank you, Jen. Any questions for Jen? Seeing none, I believe Dennis Giambetti has volunteered to do the presentation on behalf of Jane Monty, who's not here today. Dennis?
I'm sorry, David, I was not aware of that, but which committee?
David, I have.
Wait a minute, wait. I was told, I'm sorry, I was told it was Dennis, but it's actually John Romano. John Romano, go ahead.
Go for it, John.
Sorry, John. Sorry, Dennis. That is totally my mistake.
No problem. Dennis, I'm happy to let you do it if you want.
Well, the floor is yours, John.
Good morning, everyone. I'm John Romano with Mass DOT Highway. I'm filling in for Jay Monty in the City of Everett, who is the chair of the Boston Region MPO Congestion Management Process Committee. The congestion management process is a federally mandated MPO program, which indicates where and when congestion is occurring on the transportation network and determines strategies to alleviate congestion. The Boston Region MPO CMP is multimodal as it monitors transit, bicycle facilities, pedestrian facilities, park and ride facilities, as well as expressway and arterial roadways. The CMP is data-driven with performance measures used to depict the duration, extent, intensity, and reliability of congestion conditions. The committee meets to guide the development and implementation of the CMP, recommending projects and programs to reduce congestion and improve mobility, safety, and efficiency. In FY 2023, the CMP committee provided feedback and direction to the Learning from Roadway Pricing Discrete Study. Previously, the CMP committee has overseen projects such as express highway and arterial performance dashboards, MBTA system-wide park and ride monitoring, traffic congestion in the Boston region, beyond the daily commute, non-recurring congestion study. Our committee meets quarterly or as needed. Meetings are usually held on Thursdays at 9 a.m. before our MPO meetings. And the committee currently consists of the following 8 members. As I said, City of Everett is the chair, which is led by Jay Monty, myself from Mass DOT, the City of Boston, Three Rivers Interlocal Council, the Town of Arlington, the MBTA Advisory Board, the Regional Transportation Advisory Council, and the Massport Authority. If you're interested in joining, we have a few additional spots. You can reach out to Jay Monty, and we are joined by Ryan Hicks from CTPS as the staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Excellent job stepping in. Any questions for John? Seeing none, the last presentation will be by our very own Brian Kane.
Thank you, David. Ironically enough, I'm currently driving my daughter home from the orthodontist, so I cannot appear on camera, but I am not in congestion that needs management. So that's a transportation joke there, folks.
And you're also speaking hands-free, I'm sure.
Absolutely hands-free. Would never violate the laws of the Commonwealth.
Just put that on the record, Brian.
Thank you very much, David. You're very kind. So the Administration and Finance Committee supports Haral Gandhi and Tegan and her whole team to oversee the finances, the budget, and much more recently this year, much more focused, I should say, the administration of CTPS itself. So every year we go through a budget process to help the staff come up with how they want to spend our money. We also work very closely with them on spending. So every quarter we receive a spending update from Haral and her team to make sure that we are on budget. We work very closely with the team on its overhead rates. And more recently this year, we focused a lot more on the administration side, making sure that CTPS has all of the proper policies and procedures in place for things like personnel, and making sure that Tegan and her team have the full support of the board as she sees fit and as we see fit. So it is not a board that, not a committee that meets incredibly often. We meet as needed and at least once a quarter, and we are always happy to have new members, especially those who want to help us think a little bit differently about how we do things. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions for Brian? Seeing none. So just to recap, if you're interested in joining a committee, please contact the chair, or you can always contact Tegan. But the chairs are Jen Rowe for the TIP committee, Brian Kane for ANF, Jay Monty for the Congestion Management Committee, and Derek Cravat for the UPWP. We'd like to hear back from you by November 9th, and obviously rent them as the new member. You know, if it takes you a little longer, we understand, and please do reach out to Tegan so she can help you navigate through that process if you're interested in joining one or more committees. Also, if for some reason you can't stay on the committee you're on, please let us know, but please, we would really like you all to continue on. Everybody does really good work, and we appreciate all of your efforts. Next item on the agenda. Oh, I'm sorry. Does anybody have any questions before we go to the next item? Seeing none. Next item on the agenda is the Lynn intersection study. Seth Asante.
Good morning. My name is Seth Asante, MPO staff, and I will be presenting the results of the lane intersection study. Next slide, please. No, previous one. Thank you. I want to first recognize Julie Dombrowski, who managed this study, conducted most of the analysis before she left CTPS a couple of months ago. All credits to Julie. In today's presentation, I'll provide a brief background of the study, the engagement process, then describe the existing conditions and short-term improvements, and conclude with the implementation process. Next slide, please. The lane intersection studies was conducted as part of the MPO's multimodal mobility infrastructure program. The outcome of the studies is recommended improvements that focus on all roadway users within a complete street framework. Municipalities and MassDOTs have been receptive to these studies. They provide them with the opportunity to review conceptual options to improve specific intersections before committing to design and engineering funds. In federal fiscal year 2023, MPO staff prioritized 2 intersections in lane for study. They are the Washington Street and Hanover Street and Beacon Hill Avenue and Freeman Square, which is the intersection of Union Street, Batham, Baldwin, and Salisbury Streets. The selection criteria for these 2 intersections was based on safety conditions, multimodal significance, transportation equity, and implementation potential. Next slide, please. These are the locations of the 2 intersections. The first intersection is located north of downtown Lane in a residential section on Washington Street. The anchors of that neighborhood are the Louis Barrett Residences, which is an apartment complex for people 55 years of age or older, and the Corbett Elementary School and the Boys and Girls Club of Lane. The second intersection is located in downtown Lane at Freeman Square. The anchor of that neighborhood is the Lane Community Health Center, which provides primary care services to residents of Lane and neighboring communities. Also at Freeman Square is the Greater Lane Senior Services, which is a non-profit aging services access point, serving people age 60 and older, and also adults living with disabilities. Next slide, please. This is the Washington Street and Hanover and Beacon Hill Avenue intersection, showing the Louis Barrett residences in the background. The Corbett Elementary School and Boys and Girls Club of Lane are located south of the intersection about 4 blocks away. This intersection is widely used by students walking to and from school and older population who live at the Louis Barrett residences. It is an unsignalized intersection with traffic on Hanover Street under stop control. Washington Street traffic is not controlled, so the vehicles do not stop. Beacon Hill Avenue is a one-way street that takes traffic out of the intersection. Next slide, please. This is Freeman Square. The land use near Freeman Square is mixed. As I mentioned earlier, the Lynn Community Health Center is located at Freeman Square, and there are numerous businesses and restaurants also in that vicinity. Many of the people traveling through the intersection are traveling to the health center and businesses at Freeman Square. It is also an unsignalized intersection with traffic on Union Street and Bathurst Street under stop control. Baldwin and Salisbury Streets are one-way streets that take traffic out of the intersection. Next slide, please. MPO staff coordinated with the City of Lynn to engage stakeholders around the steady intersection. The Washington Street and Hanover Street intersection is in a transportation equity neighborhood with minorities, low English proficiency, and low income population. Many of the people using the intersection at Freeman Square are also a transportation equity population. MPO staff used several methods to engage stakeholders, including personal surveys, personal interviews, and tabling at the intersections. There were poster boards with Spanish translation to help users describe their experiences using the intersections. An interpreter provided by the City of Lynn was in attendance, and Spanish-speaking MPO staff were also present to assist in better engagement with Spanish-speaking participants. In addition, we provided incentives in the form of gift cards to participants for the value of their time and also sharing their experiences with MPO staff. This is the first time this kind of incentives have been used in surveys. MPO staff also engaged residents of the senior citizen housing and also employees at the Lynn Community Health Center. Next slide, please. This is an example of the poster board that was set up for Freeman Square with Spanish translations. Next slide, please. These are some of the highlights from the engagement process. Need for improving safety at the intersection, need for improving infrastructure for walking, biking, using transit and assistive mobility devices, and need for bus service amenities at the intersections, which serve the elderly, young students, and equity populations. Next slide, please. Safety conditions were the primary reason for studying this intersection. At the Washington and Hanover Street intersection, there were 50 crashes between 2016 and 2021, a 6-year period, averaging about 8 crashes per year. This location is also on the Highway Safety Improvement Program's pedestrian crash cluster. It's also on the intersection crash cluster. Next slide, please. At Freeman Square, there were 70 crashes during the same 6-year period, averaging about 12 crashes per year. This location is also on the Highway Safety Improvement Program pedestrian crash cluster. Most of the crashes at Freeman Square occurred along Union Street, and there was one fatality in March 2018. 12 of the crashes involved personal injuries, and 8 of the personal injuries involve people in crosswalks, and 27% of the crashes occurred under dark conditions. Next slide, please. Analysis of the existing conditions, engagement with stakeholders, discussions with city officials, and field visit revealed the following issues and concerns, which are similar at both locations. They include high speeds of vehicle, high number of crashes, poor infrastructure conditions, lack of bus shelters, and disregard of traffic control, as well as aggressive driving. Next slide, please. For the next 2 slides, I will describe the short-term improvements, which are low-cost improvements intended to improve safety for people walking and biking. Next slide, please. At the Washington Street and Hanover Street intersection, the short-term improvements include repainting a high visibility crosswalk, creating painted pedestrian zones with vertical separations to protect people crossing streets. Painted pedestrian zones are painted road areas that are wrapped around sidewalk corners to make pedestrian crossing intersection more visible to people driving. The 2 inserts at the bottom of the slide are painted pedestrian zones. Additional improvements at the Washington Street intersection include prohibiting parking at the approaches to increase visibility for people walking, installing detectable warning plates to the curb ramps to make them ADA compliant, and also pedestrian signal heads with push buttons at the mid-block crossing on Washington Street. Next slide, please. These are the short-term improvements at Freeman Square. They are similar to those proposed for Washington Street intersection: repainting crosswalk, prohibiting parking, installing pedestrian warning signal, and also creating painted pedestrian zones. Next slide, please. The long-term improvements will require design and engineering and a larger budget to implement. Next slide, please. MPO staff provided 2 long-term alternatives for the Washington and Hanover Street intersection. Alternative 1 will change the control of the intersection to an all-way stop control and install ADA compliant curb ramps, tighten the turning radar with curb extension, and also creating curb extension to provide space for adding bus shelters and improving street lights. Additional improvement also include raising the mid-block crossing on Washington Street near the elderly citizen housing to increase visibility of that crosswalk. Next slide, please. Alternative 2 at the Washington and Hanover Street will change the intersection control to a traffic signal control to control the flow of vehicles and provide sufficient time for safe and efficient pedestrian crossings. Key elements of Alternative 2 include removing the mid-block crossing signal and crosswalk. Alternative 2 also include high visibility crosswalk ADA compliant curb ramps, curb extension to create space for bus shelters, and also making the sidewalks, removing the parking close to the approaches at the intersection. Next slide, please. At Freeman Square, MPO staff developed two alternatives. Alternative one will keep the intersection control the same, but add geometric modification to promote safer travel through the intersection. They also include curb extensions and channelized island, creating share lane pavement marking on Union Street, and also installing curb extensions to provide space for bus shelters for the bus stops on Union Street and improving street lighting. Next slide, please. Alternative 2 at Freeman Square is a small roundabout retrofit to reduce vehicle speed and promote safer travel. Additional improvements included in Alternative 2 are similar to those provided in Alternative 1. Next slide, please. This study gives the city an opportunity to address the needs of those intersections and plan for design and engineering. The proposed short-term improvements will increase safety for people walking at the intersection, and they are estimated to cost between $20,000 and $40,000. The proposed long-term improvements will maximize safety and operational benefits for all travel modes. The small roundabout retrofit at Freeman Square is estimated to cost as much as $500,000, and a new traffic signal installation on Washington Street at Hanover Street will cost as much as $1.5 million. Next slide, please. The city of Lynn has jurisdiction of the intersections and roadways in the study area and is responsible for renovating the intersection. MPO staff recommend all alternatives should be included and further investigated at the functional design stage. The short-term improvements should be implemented as resources are available from highway maintenance funds. For the long-term improvements, the next step will be to select the preferred alternative that is sensitive to the goals and needs of stakeholders, and to review and advance the projects through the planning process. They should be implemented as resources are available from local Chapter 90 funding or through shared streets and spaces grants, or working with the MPO for TIP funding or other sources of funds. These steps will include cooperation between the City of Lynn, the MPO, and MassDOT to advance the proposed improvement into projects. Thank you, and I'll hand over to the chair for questions and comments.
Thank you, Seth. Any questions for Seth? Sandy Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Seth, excellent work as always. Always appreciate hearing about your work on these projects, and just want to acknowledge Julie as well, who in my time at CTPS was an excellent colleague, and I can see does truly excellent work here. Wanted to say thank you for your work on paying attention to transit riders here in particular, both with bus riders, and I think it's very good to see the Freeman Square recommendations here, knowing that Silsby Street is going to be one of the walking paths to the temporary Lynn station that will be opening shortly. So I'm very glad this work is going to contribute potentially to making that area much safer for pedestrians, cyclists, and all involved. I did want to ask if you had any contact with folks at the MBTA in either on the bus priority team or any of the other folks to talk about the transit related elements. I saw there's some suggestions around bump outs and bus stop relocations. And if you have not had that contact, I just wanted to offer myself as a go-between to be happy to facilitate that.
Yeah, I took over this project late, but I know during the engagement process there were a lot of discussions about bus shelters because the two intersections involve students using the intersection and also elderly people living around those intersections. And as you mentioned about the Salisbury Street being connected to the MBTA lane station. I think it will be a useful idea because I know the city contact Aaron Clausen was very much interested in making curb extensions to be able to accommodate bus shelters at those locations. But I don't have any particular contacts from the MBTA, so I think it will be a good idea. And I can mention this to Aaron about it, that you want to offer to make the contact between MBTA and the city in improving transit amenities to help users.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Seth. Lynn Diggins?
Yeah, thank you. And I agree with Sandy. Great work. And I also appreciate the attention that you paid to transit users, especially with the bus shelters and some few questions. I mean, with respect to surveying people, were there any online surveys done?
No, this was a personal surveys and also personal interviews. So MPO staff were there. They designed the survey, short survey with questions. And I think one of the communication and engagement team is around. So if Stella is around and she participated in the survey, so she can provide more information about that for you.
Sure. So any reason for not doing online surveys?
Yeah, I can jump in there.
Sure.
So the rationale behind doing only in-person surveys for this project was after conversations with the city of Lynn when we were first planning out the engagement, we normally for quartered intersections do end up doing mostly virtual surveying, and we wanted to connect with the city sooner because we know that this is a slightly different population than we're normally engaged with, just being that the communities around both intersections in question were pretty high proportion of what we consider to be transportation equity communities. And the city recommended actually that we don't do anything virtual because it could be a barrier to folks interacting both on a level of language proficiency and English proficiency specifically, and then also just availability of technology to those people. So they recommended that we go out in person and spend time just talking to people face to face, and that's what we ended up doing.
So it's a case of one or the other, but and not both, right? So it wasn't possible to do both?
I suppose we could have done both. I think we wanted to sort of prioritize the in-person element, and we were there 4 separate times doing in-person surveying.
Gotcha. So I see that there's no cycling data. So is that because there are no cyclists on those roadways or at those intersections? Seth?
Yeah. I think there are cycling using those roadways. So we propose adding share lane markings to draw attention to people driving about, people biking at the
But-
intersection. So
But I didn't see any data for cyclists or even any indication that there have been accidents that involve cyclists. So we're like,
yeah,
wow.
I think there were some crashes involving bicycles. It's not many like the pedestrians,
Right.
but there were some, I think, one or two collisions with bicycling, and the bicyclists were in crosswalks.
Okay, maybe I didn't. I probably just missed it when I read those that data. So thank you. And so with respect to the recommendations, I mean, well, one is on the Hanover Washington intersection, the number 2, you removed the mid block crosswalk. Why?
We removed the mid-block crosswalk because the proposal was to install a traffic signal. So if you have a traffic signal at that location and the mid-block crosswalk is a few feet, it becomes a problem. So definitely you have to remove that because the signal will provide safer crossing also for and can handle, will be a replacement for the mid-block crosswalk. So that was the reason why it was removed, because it will not be needed.
Makes perfect sense, and it's pretty obvious when you explain it that way. So on the Hanover intersection, I mean, looking at the effects of the options, and I've lost my ability to get to this. Oh, here it is. You know, it seems like, you know, there is for the Hanover Street northbound, it's horrible in terms of the level of service in the AM and the PM, and it's improved in alternative 1 and alternative. Well, actually, even not so much in alternative 2. It just seems like the amount of improvement, is not that much, and for 2 of the 3 pathways, it goes down a bit, or actually quite a bit. I mean, it goes from A grading, and then existing conditions to a D, for alternative 1, and a B for alternative 2. So it seems to me that the advantage to these would be in safety and not so much in throughput. Correct?
Yeah,
Yeah,
with the existing conditions, Washington Street traffic do not stop, so they have like zero delay. Hanover Street is under stop control, and that's why with much traffic on Washington Street, they can't get gaps to cross. So they force themselves into the intersection, and that's the reason why you have this right angle collisions within the intersection. So converting it to always stop kind of improves safety, but doesn't offer a decrease in delay. Converting it to a signal also increase safety because it provides positive time for vehicles and pedestrians on Hanover Street to be able to cross the intersection. So if you move from a two-way to always stop or signalized intersection, it kind of improves safety, but the signalized intersection also kind of increase the delay on Washington Street, because before, traffic on Washington Street is not stopping. The signal will make them stop. So they it's a little bit disadvantage, but it improves safety for the overall intersection and address the safety problem whereby Hanover Street doesn't have a lot of gap and force themselves into the intersection and get into a lot of crashes.
Yeah, I get you. And do we have a sense of how much will improve safety by?
we have what we call the crash modification factor. And if you convert such type of intersection, you can have as much as a reduction in crashes by as much as 15%.
Great, that's great. Did I miss that in the report?
No, it wasn't in the report, but throughout the studies I've done, I have been using the crash modification factors a lot.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to include that in the report, so that people kind of know that, that this is really going to help. With the major reason for doing the study was to improve the safety. So to the extent you have any reliable prediction for the effect that the improvements will have, on safety, be good to include that. And one final comment on roundabouts. I understand, the appeal of them, on a lot of levels. I'll just say, as a pedestrian, when you are going across an intersection, as opposed to taking a right or left turn, it does increase the distance that you need to traverse in order to cross the intersection. And those crosswalks that are provided, are a little bit unnerving to me, because you get the feeling that the cars are kind of like whipping, to the right, and there's always this concern, that they're not going to see me, especially if they aren't terribly attentive. And so that's it, my final comment. But thanks again, Seth, for a great study, and thank you everyone for listening to my questions. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Lynn. Jen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So first, thank you, Seth, for presenting this really excellent, much needed effort to improve safety, particularly for vulnerable road users, and all to the current and former staff who contributed to it. I just wanted to particularly appreciate the effort to go out at the intersections themselves and talk to people with interpreters. I know that takes a lot of coordination and budget, and that kind of persevere despite having some obstacles and connecting with the building management, and then compensating folks for their time. So I think that just really meet people where they are. In terms of the kind of alternatives, with due respect to the kind of concerns that Len raised, I did appreciate about the roundabout concept, that how far back from the intersection the crosswalks are. I think it does help a lot with kind of that feeling of vehicles kind of turning quickly into the crosswalk, and how much the roundabout alternative does shorten those individual crossing distances and points of conflict between vehicles and people crossing. And also, I guess my question, I was curious if there was discussion with Lynn about kind of the potential benefits in terms of reclaiming some of that asphalt in a roundabout concept with infrastructure and stormwater treatments.
Yeah, okay. First, I want to mention that this runabout concept also came from the engagement process. Second, Freeman Square has like 5 approaches, so it's complex. Third, if you have the runabout, without the runabout, a pedestrian crossing on any approach will have to be looking for maybe vehicles coming from 4 other approaches. That's a kind of a high risk for them. If you create a runabout, a pedestrian will just have to look at one direction, you see, and cross. And also the runabouts have what we call the splitter island, which is like a median, which also offer a refuge area for a pedestrian to look for the second stage crossing. And at that point also, you just have to look at one direction. So the runabout has this advantage. And also, I know the area is a little bit tight. There isn't much space, but the curvature that the runabout creates kind of slow down vehicles, because during the engagement processes, people mention high speeds of vehicle, distracted driving, and the rest. So the runabout has a lot of advantage, but it still needs to be reviewed during the functional design stage to get to know how far back the side the crosswalk should be. So, and also talking with stakeholders around the site to see their preferred alternative. So I think there's a little bit of process that we'll have to go through, but from most runabouts that have been talked about in the literature, they kind of reduce crashes, even if crashes occur, because the speeds of vehicles are slow. They are not severe injuries. You see, most of them may be property damages only. So this is an option that the city will have to review in with alternative one and come out with the best option.
Thank you, Seth. Brian?
Thank you, David. Thank you, Seth. Great presentation. So quick question for you and maybe for Stella as well. What outreach did you have with the city of Lynn, specifically Mayor Nicholson, and have they suggested a preferred alternative?
Yeah. So so far the preferred alternative haven't come up yet, but I know the city is very eager to get some improvement within the two locations, help people using transit, and also because the area has this senior citizen housing and services, they are eager to look for funding to be able to implement some of the improvement that we are proposed. So there is a great interest from the city to do the improvement, but as of now, it needs a little bit of discussion with other stakeholders to be able to come out with the preferred alternative.
Thank you, Seth. Eric Molinari?
Thank you, Seth, for your work and your presentation on this. My question is regarding the wondering if the study took into consideration the ongoing maintenance costs between the two designs. I would assume the roundabout would be slightly cheaper.
Yeah, if you are talking about, there are two intersections. If you are talking about Freeman Square, we had two alternatives for Freeman Square where the runabout is proposed. And the runabout is alternative 2. It's a higher cost than alternative 1, which is just keep the existing control and make some geometric modification. If we look at the other side, which is Washington Street and Hanover Street intersection, that's where the signal was proposed, and the signal is the higher cost. Usually, this is going to be a new signal at that location, and it will require equipment and new crosswalk and all this thing. And my experience talking to MassDOT district engineers, usually the signal usually is around 1.5 million. So that's a high cost improvement for that location. But depending on the crashes at that location, I think a signal would do very well to provide both the major street, which is Washington Street, and the side street, which is Hanover Street, provide both traffic with some green time to be able to cross the street safely.
Thank you, Seth. Any other questions? Seeing none. Excellent presentation, Seth.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is member items. Are there any? Seeing none, our next meeting, oh, I'm sorry, Brian.
Sorry, David. Just wanted to note that the MBTA Advisory Board is hosting a public meeting with Acting Secretary Tibbetts Nutt on the 15th of November at 10 a.m. Information is on our website. It is a public meeting and open to everyone, and we are very grateful to the Acting Secretary, our nominal chair, for attending this. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Brian. Any other member items? Just like to remind everybody that our next meeting is the annual meeting. It is November 30th in the Transportation Boardroom at 10 o'clock. I believe they'll be serving snacks at 9:30. Please attend. And if your chief elected official is going to attend, please let Tegan know. And that being said, I don't think there's anything else to take up today, so I can get a motion in a second to adjourn, and please state your name for the record. Brian Kane.
I move to adjourn, Mr. Chair. Brian Kane, MBTA Advisory Board.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Diggins
I can
seconds.
second that. Oh, sorry.
That's great. Tim Rose seconded, as did Lynn Diggins, so you can take your pick. Without objection, we are
It's my
adjourned.
first time able to contribute, so.
Without
sorry.
objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much. Bye, guys. See you, Daniel.